Well, first of all, I want to teach you a good Jewish word. And the word is chutzpah. How many of you know that word, other than those of you who grew up? Good. Chutzpah means a lot of nerve. And let me just say, for the two of us to follow your stories is a lot of nerve, because your stories were spectacular and moving and powerful and inspiring. All of them. Just fantastic. So I don't have 3 minutes, because I could go for a long time on the background of why I'm standing here. Maybe the most important reason is that when Ari calls you up to do something, you just say yes. Now, why do I say that? Because I was his teacher in Rabbinical School. And even more crazy, I was his mom's youth group advisor when she was in high school, which basically says, I am older than dirt, but it's okay. So that's one of the reasons I'm here. But let me give you one little part of the background that my very good friend Sarah, with whom I worked for 17 years, 16 years, a very long time, she didn't get to say the point that for 26 years I was a congregational rabbi before coming back to HUC as the head of the Rabbinical School. And all of my rabbinical career, congregational career, was in the state of Tennessee. And that will set up for you why I'm telling you these stories. So let me go back to a little boy in high school living in Coral Gables, Florida, because my dad was head in TV stations over those years, and we moved around. I went to 3 high schools from 3 states in the 4 years of high school. By the time I got to college, I knew most of the freshman class because I'd been to school with them somewhere all over those years. We moved to Coral Gables, and I, being a good Jewish boy, joined the Junior Classical League, which is the group that specializes in Latin language, a very important thing for my future rabbinical career. And I was in the forensic part of it, meaning I gave speeches. And I wrote a speech about, with Jewish history and Latin history and the Romans, and most of you know about Masada, maybe you've heard of that event in Jewish history. So I gave this speech in Miami, South Florida, and I won the first prize, and that sent me into Central Florida, and I won the first prize, and it sent me to the state championship in that center of Judaism, Tallahassee, Florida, where I competed against 4 other people. And after it was over, and this young man from a Catholic school, a parochial school, won, the judges, there were 5 of them, came up and they said, we need to tell you something, Ken. Of the 5 judges, you got 3 perfect 100%. And you got 0 from the 2 nuns on the board, on the judges. And who won with kind of mediocre grades from the other 3 judges, but 2 100s from the 2 nuns? His speech was, ask not what Rome can do for you. Ask what you can do for Rome. One of the great creative speeches of all time. Let's move forward. Now I'm the assistant rabbi in Nashville, Tennessee. About 1,000 families, a congregation that had been started in the 1850s. One Memorial Day, I think it was my 2nd year in the pulpit, I'm sitting with the rabbi, the senior rabbi, in his office, which had a bunch of windows, and we watched a red pickup truck drive onto our property. The temple was closed, of course, for Memorial Day. And 4 people got out, and a few minutes later, a blue truck follows up, and out come people with shotguns. And the people in the blue truck arrested the people in the red truck. And off they went. What was that moment? It was a plan by the Ku Klux Klan in Tennessee in 1981 that they were going to, number 1, blow up the NBC television station because the newsreader on NBC in Nashville was a Jewish man. And they were going to leave evidence at the bombing or blowing up of this TV station as if it were being done by members of the African American community. And the plan B, next part of this plan, 4 parts, was to go in, kidnap and kill a young child from the black community leaving police uniforms, so that it would be the black community thinking it was the police. And then they were going to go and blow up our synagogue because they had planted a bomb on the gas main of the building. What they didn't know was that one of the 4 of them was an FBI informant. And the blue truck was the FBI. And the bomb they were planting was a dud. But they didn't know it. The leader of the Klan in that little event was a woman whose name I'm going to give you because it's not important to history, but it's important to the story. Her name was Gladys Gerginti. Interesting that it was a woman leader of this particular cell of the Ku Klux Klan. Well, needless to say, we didn't get blown up, or I wouldn't be here today. They were arrested. She went to jail, where she had a heart attack. She was then taken to the local hospital that did indigent care. And who was her doctor? He was the son of my senior rabbi, whom she had intended to blow up. And so the newspaper that picked it up and the television that picked it up, not just the story of this attempt for the African American community, the police, the Jewish community, but here was this irony that this doctor saved the life of this person whose goal had been to kill his father. Story 2. Not Nashville anymore, but Chattanooga. One of the backgrounds that Sarah didn't have to say, because I'm sure she knew I'd mention it, is that I had the privilege of being the head of the Human Rights Commission of both Hamilton County, which is Chattanooga, and Davidson County, which is Nashville. And at the same time was head of the Clergy Association of both of those, and then for the state. In Nashville, there was the bombing. In Chattanooga, I'm working in my office late, about pretty much close to right now, a couple weeks before Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. And the doorbell rings, and we're an inner city congregation. Open the door. And I look and see, oh, there's a young African American man who had been there a couple days ago to use the bathroom and the water fountain. Only this time he came in with a gun. And he came into my office, put a gun to my back, handcuffed me behind my back, found a towel somewhere, I guess in my office in the closet, and tied it around my head, marched me to my car, put me in the trunk of the car, and drove off with me in the trunk, handcuffed, blindfolded, drove into the woods between Chattanooga and Georgia on I-75. Any of you who have driven there know it's nothing but woods and emptiness. Pulled out that gun, shot a couple of bullets through my car, thankfully not hitting me, opened the trunk, pulled me out of this car, left me in the woods, blindfolded and handcuffed, got in the car, and drove off. Now that's not a particular racially motivated story, I don't think. But the ending of it was. I walked, blindfolded, into hitting a tree. Because it's dark. And by getting to the tree, I was able to kind of move my head enough that I got the towel off so I could see. And I started walking toward the light. This sounds like a post-death story, but it was actually toward some kind of population. And I ended up walking into a fish restaurant, Captain D's fish restaurant. And I'm handcuffed in a suit and tie. You have to remember, I forgot that part, because I was supposed to be doing a dinner for visiting educators coming to Chattanooga. And I walked into this restaurant to this young woman who's behind the desk, and I said, could you do me a big favor? Could you give me a glass of water? And she looked at me and said, oh, sure. She puts a glass of water on the counter. And I said, well, I can't pick it up because I'm handcuffed. She said, handcuffed? And I said, don't speak, don't yell. I'm fine, everything's good. And she started yelling, handcuffed, you, and it louder and screaming in the whole room and everybody in the restaurant. Okay, this is bad. Ultimately, we call the police. The police come, pick me up. They cannot open the handcuffs. They don't have a key. So they take me to a locksmith place, and they ultimately undo the handcuffs. And just to give it a little bit of reality, that's the key that they used to open it, these handcuffs. The young man who stole my car and shot at me drove from Atlanta to Birmingham to Memphis, where he totaled the car, kidnapped another person, put her in the trunk. She died. He went from Memphis to Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, where he was captured, put in jail, and he hanged himself in jail. Now, why am I giving you all the rest of the story? Because when it happened, I called up the publisher of the local Chattanooga newspaper, owned by the family that owned the New York Times, by the way. And I said, don't put this in the paper. Or if you have to, put it on page 49 next to the ads or something. It's no big deal. I'm fine. Everything is good. I go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the phone is ringing off the hook. The newspaper, the television, the radio. Why? Lead story. Prominent Chattanooga figure kidnapped. We got so much press coverage that the synagogue's lawyer said to me, you just need to have a press conference and get it over with. It'll be gone in a couple days. So we did. The first question from our local TV station was, Rabbi, you are the head of the Human Rights Commission. Doesn't this change your opinions about black people? This isn't 1883, this is 1983 or 4. I'm going to give you one little wrinkle that I was a little concerned about even sharing, but it fits into the conversations we've had. When we were when we were almost bombed in Nashville, a couple days later was the meeting of a group that had been going on for about 10 or 12 years that was called the Black Jewish Dialogue. And it was half leaders of the Jewish community, half leaders of the African American community, a wonderful group of people, representatives from Fisk and from the great leadership in the African community as well as our Jewish community. And what was fascinating to me was the comment from one of my very close friends and colleagues who is the head of one of the biggest African American churches in Nashville. And he said, well, we're glad everything was fine with you, but now let's get to the problems of the black community because those are the real problems. And here we were having this close to being blown up. And it required for us to kind of recapitulate and re-understand what this group could and couldn't do. And so I lay that question out for all of you in the months of your meeting ahead. I'm going to give you one more story. This isn't part of my 3 minutes, it's part of my whatever I was supposed to say. I was sitting in my office at the Hebrew Union College. I'm head of the Rabbinical School, the associate dean. And I get a phone call from the president, the then president of the Hebrew Union College, not who we were talking about, Danielle. And He said to me, "What's happening there?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm sitting in my office. Everything looks fine." He said, "I just got communicated from Jerusalem and Los Angeles that there is a swastika that has been painted on your property in Cincinnati, Ohio." And I said, "I didn't see it." And he was not pleased with me, needless to say. So I walk out to the front sign on Clifton Avenue, not too far from where we are now. Those of you who are familiar with the campus, it's next to Good Samaritan Hospital. And on this sign, which is a two-sided sign, on one side were these big swastikas with spray paint, which somehow somebody driving down Clifton Avenue saw the sign, told somebody, it got to the news, and went to Jerusalem before it went to me 100 yards away, whose office faced the other side of the sign on which the swastikas had not been painted. It's not a big deal, a swastika. No one was hurt. But the results in Cincinnati were very telling. Because in some cases it was people calling us, "How can we help and support you?" And other people who called our office and who had signs and placards were, "You Jews," or "Hitler should have finished the job." And so that's why I present this one to you. In the case of one, it could have been a bunch of deaths. In the case of the second story, there were 2 deaths. In the case of the last story, no one was hurt. But our sense of safety as a community was damaged profoundly. And interestingly, just down the street from us on Clifton Avenue is one of the Islamic communities, one of the 2 centers in our city. And their imam called us right away, as did most of the religious leadership of the city. So the community organizational leadership, they were there for us, with us, standing side by side. The Jewish community leadership, as Danielle represents so beautifully. Other members of the civic community and the mayor and the city council and all those people, they were there. But there were also those people who said, as I said to you, Hitler didn't finish the job. So those are some stories. They're nowhere near as profound and meaningful as Amy is going to share with you. And there's certainly nothing as important as what Sarah has done and what Ari continues to do and Danielle always does. But these are just 4 little chapters in the life of a clergy person and just a member of this circle, like all of you. But the stories are all of our stories, and the lessons are all of our lessons. So thank you.
You shared the story of the aftermath with your group and sort of you needed to sort of, there was questions of, hey, what are we going to do next? And, we need to get back to the real world. How did it impact the work you were doing in, coalition building and community organizing and connecting with the community after that?
Yeah, that's a super good question. And I can answer it in a little bit of a practical way and then a really philosophical way. After the conversation, that just brief little kind of back and forth, both sides, we didn't say this to each other, but I mean to the other group, but we said it to each other, and then we said it to the group. We kind of realized that we hadn't been talking substance with either sets of groups. That if they came away from that moment, and that's what the takeaway was, oh, glad you didn't get bombed, but let me talk to you about the real problems. And I'm thinking, those are real problems. That's a police problem. That's an African American, the black community problem. This is Nashville, 1982 or 3. It's a different world. I mean, it's dramatically different than most of us live today. I don't even know if it is or not. I wish it was different. But that allowed us to say, you know what? we really haven't been talking about the real issues, if that's the takeaway. Now, I do want to mention, I mean, I grew up in Chicago in the South Side in the 60s, 50s, not going past there, early 50s. And my sister and I went to, at one point, a very good public elementary school in South Side Chicago, not too far from where President Obama's home was in Hyde Park. And this school was, give or take, in the early 60s or late 50s, probably 90% white. Not Jewish, but white. Within 3 or 4 years of that moment, my sister and I were the last white people living on our block who went to that school, because integration in South Side Chicago, white flight, all the things that happen in lots of the cities that we know of. As I said, we were the last 2 white kids in our elementary school, literally the last 2. And I was a patrol boy. You know what a patrol boy is? How many of you? None of you remember patrol boys? Anyway, it used to be, it was the person, it could be a girl, but they were called patrol boys, who would stand on the corner of the streets and help kids to go to school at lunch. You know, after lunch they'd walk back and they'd have a little colorful thing, I don't know, a band around you, and you showed you were a patrol boy, right? Well, I was the patrol boy for this corner, a block from my house, on the way to our school, because we walked to school back and forth. It was a neighborhood school. And I got surrounded by a group of African-American older boys than me, who were, I guess, in 7th grade, and I was in 5th grade. And they beat me up for being the white kid in the black neighborhood, even though it had only been a black neighborhood. So, I mean, I dealt with race early on. I don't think it had anything to do with Jewishness, but it certainly did race. And there are plenty of stories that we could all have. I'm, going to be 72. It's a different world then than it is now, even though all of you have told stories that could have fit in with where I was in those times. Yeah. And we could do the same thing, by the way, with religions. I was talking with one of your colleagues on the group who's a representative of a Protestant tradition within, as a minister. And I said to her, she's a Presbyterian. I said, are you Presbyterian PCA, meaning Presbyterian of Congregation of America, or PCUSA, which may not mean a whole lot of difference to you, but for us, the PCUSAs are the good Presbyterians, and the PCA are the anti-Semitic Presbyterians. And that's the case. So even within the ministry, that's a whole nother reality. Ari may remember this. I don't remember if I think we had one session with you, but we brought in a distinguished member of the Christian clergy who happened to be the registrar for HUC, and I gave him 2 days of senior seminar, and he taught a course that was called Christianity for Rabbis, because rabbis need to know who's at the church next door on the block over. Are they going to be friends and supporters, or are they going to be opposition? And in Tennessee, with the Southern Baptist Convention based in Nashville, we had a whole bunch of challenges with religion of the different denominations, and that was anti-Semitism, no question about it. That's not what you asked, but it fits in. It fits in the broader sense. And the last thing I want to say, and again, I'm off my soapbox. Please remember that all the stories I'm telling and that Amy's talking about, and Sarah especially now, but even more with her Holocaust work, this is the story of every single one of you. Whatever your color, whatever your background, whatever your any ethnicities, this isn't a Jewish issue. This may be this event, this gathering, may be funded by the Cohen family, who are wonderful people, and the Jewish community, and Danielle and the Federation, and all that kind of stuff. But you're here not because of what it means to Jews. You're here because of how each of these things speak to you, and that's why I'm telling you the stories from my perspective. Yes, I'm a rabbi. Yes, I'm a professor of rabbinical things and all that stuff. But this is because we're all in this together, and that's what I hope you come away with. It's not one faith's issue. It's all of ours in different ways. So, end of my sermon. I'll use that for Rosh Hashanah. Here we go.